Well, thank you for joining us today. We'd like to welcome you to the Cloud Experience from an attorney's perspective, Educational Series Part 3. My name is Patrick Ibrahim. I'll be the moderator for this event. We'll have Scott Hendler joining us. I'd also like to introduce Björn Shukla, CEO of LevelCloud. Björn, how are you doing?
I'm doing great and excited to be part of the webinar today. I understand we have a lot of people on the webinar today, and Scott should be joining us any minute. So thank you, Patrick.
Yeah, absolutely. And since there are so many attendees to our webinar today, I'd like to encourage you, if you do have questions, please go ahead and type them in the chat section on your webinar window, and we'll address them accordingly. It's just we may have some issues with so many. I want to address as many questions as possible. So feel free to ask any questions you'd like in the chat section. So, Björn, what I'd like to do in the time we have, I'd like you to tell us a little bit about LevelCloud and what your services are comprised of.
Yeah, so LevelCloud is a cloud service provider. We specialize in law firms. We have been helping law firms for at least 4 years now move to the cloud, and Scott is a very old client. He was one of the early adopters of cloud, a big believer in cloud computing, and I thought it would be really great to have him come and talk about his experiences and let people hear from him rather than us telling about what we do and things of that nature. But basically, in a nutshell, we host applications, email, all your data, everything in our data centers, Tier 4 data centers that are located in Texas and Kansas City. And basically, we do 100% cloud computing. So when most of our clients seldom have any servers on site and typically have all their assets, all their data, everything hosted with us, and we act as a one-stop shop as an IT department for most of the firms we do business with.
So Björn, if you don't mind, what I'd like to do is I want to show our guests a kind of a diagram, a workflow diagram of the services we provide and have you explain it. Can we do that?
Yeah, sure, no problem. We'll kill some time until Scott joins us. I hear that he's joining us any minute. So LevelCloud Workspace is a unique, customized solution developed specifically with law firms in mind. Most of the clients that we work with have PCI, HIPAA, FISMA, or other type of compliance requirements. And when you are managing servers and when you have those resources on site, it's difficult to meet all these requirements. What is also happening these days is ABA and other entities are telling us, what we're hearing is that larger companies are mandating that security on the law firm. So they're questioning what type of security they have in place, and they're mandating that you have certain types of securities and compliance in place if they want their business. So it is becoming increasingly difficult for law firms to spend a lot of money in security and trying to meet all these compliance requirements. And that's where we come into the picture, where we have already taken the time and effort and in building a solution that addresses those specific concerns. So in this particular diagram, you can see that we all understand cloud computing is anytime, anywhere, access from any device. We all know that. However, what's underneath is basically infrastructure. All these applications still have to run on infrastructure that is hosted not somewhere in the cloud, but in a very highly secure building called data center. And so we host everything, all their applications. We offer a unique environment, a virtual hosted desktop type of environment where they can access their email and all those good things. And for folks that have IT departments in place, we have a unique platform where on-site IT can quickly add users on the fly and provision users on the fly. So it's pretty neat.
Yeah, well, that's great. Thank you for that intro, Bjorn. Scott Hendler is about to join us, folks. So if you can hang tight for just a moment, he'll get his audio get set up and be joining us. So, Bjorn, I appreciate your intro to the solution.
Sure. So for the folks that have joined us today for the first time, we want to make you aware that we have been hosting these educational seminars or webinars for a couple of months now, and this is part 3 of our educational series. Next month we are going to be talking about cyber liability, and it's a very hot topic. A lot of people are hearing about cyber liability. There's lots of recent headlines that are made in the cloud computing space from breach of data. And so we thought it's very timely to talk about cyber liability and what type of insurances you need to have in place to protect protect your firms, and also how to choose a cloud provider and what do they need to have in place and things of that nature. So I highly encourage that you check out our website, levelcloud.net, and participate and let your friends and other people know. We think that educating people is very important in today's day and age, especially in cloud computing when there's so much sales. We're hearing about cloud computing everywhere, but nobody's really educating the people. And so we thank you for your participation today, of course. And I believe Scott should be online. Do you want to check with
Yeah,
Scott?
Scott is actually on. He's about to join us in a moment. But I do encourage our guests. We try to put a lot of time into these webinars to make sure we give you relevant information. So we so much appreciate your time joining us. And at the end of the webinar, we'll have a special offer for you. So stick around. Really want to get you engaged. We want to help you learn about the cloud and get some exclusive information. So Scott will be joining us in just a moment. Let's hear from Scott. Welcome, Scott. How are you doing?
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Oh, okay. I thought I was in listen-only mode, so I was concerned I couldn't tie in. Hello, everyone. I'm sorry I'm late. I was experiencing a few technical difficulties to get into the seminar.
Well, that's okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us. So,
Welcome, Scott.
Thank you. So where are we? Would you like me to just tell you a little bit about my law practice and
please,
how I ended
yeah.
up using the cloud?
Please do, Scott. Yeah. Yeah, when you're ready, go ahead and give us a little bit of history, what you practice and the success you've enjoyed, and go ahead.
Okay. Well, I founded my law firm about 21 years ago in Austin, Texas, after practicing with a nationally prominent toxic injury plaintiffs firm. And after several years doing that, I left and moved my practice from Dallas to Austin, Texas, and founded, at that time, Hendler Law. And this year, in our 21st year, has changed the name of the firm. It's ongoing, but we have two new partners, Sean Lyons and Lulu Flores. So the firm is now Hendler Lyons Flores. And it's a national plaintiff's trial practice where we represent individuals usually with some kind of toxic injury, which tends to be very serious, and some other serious catastrophic injuries. So, for example, I do a lot of mesothelioma cases, which is, mesothelioma, of course, is a signature cancer of asbestos exposure. And the firm represents people all over the United States against the asbestos industry in connection with those cases. My law partner, Sean Lyons, has a very storied background in pharmacology and medical negligence issues. And so we've taken on handling cases that cause serious illnesses from dangerous drugs that probably should not be on the market, as well as defective medical devices. For example, we represent several dozen individuals with metal hip implants that have been recalled from the market because they're releasing metal ions into the blood and causing other associated problems. And then we've taken the skills that we've developed in handling those kinds of complex injuries and applied it to other single event cases that require the level of skill and ability that we can bring to a particular case. For example, we tried a lawsuit in New Mexico federal court recently involving a horrific crash by an intoxicated driver minutes after he left the second of two restaurants where he was overserved both times. That resulted in the death of two teenage sisters who were in the back seat of their parents' car with their mother and father in the front. And we were able to, achieve quite a significant recovery for the family over 4 years of litigation. I've handled cases against foreign companies, a Japanese asbestos manufacturer in connection with a mesothelioma case that took me to Japan. I've represented banana plantation workers from various Latin American countries against multinational banana growers and the chemical manufacturers who manufactured and marketed a very dangerous pesticide that resulted in sterility. I was hired by Covenant House to bring a lawsuit against the glue manufacturer that was responsible for really dealing glue to street children in Central America. They were turning a blind eye to excessive amounts of their product that were being sold on the streets that they explicitly knew was much more than the legitimate market could bear. So those are the kinds of cases that we handle, and because we have excuse me, because our practice really is national. I mean, just to give you an example, September 16th, my law partner John Lyons and I appeared before the Hawaii Supreme Court, and on October 15th, I appeared before the Delaware Supreme Court, and we have cases in states all in between. So being able to have the kind of flexibility that having all of our servers in a cloud enables us to really be very nimble and work from wherever we need to be able to work, whether it's just being at home versus the office, or being literally in Hawaii or Delaware or Illinois or California in order to access our various applications that we use to manage our law firm, and then of course all the traditional kinds of applications that probably everyone that uses the internet uses, whether it's social media or email, calendars, and so forth.
So
we
Scott,
use
sorry to interject, Scott, but fabulous introduction. I think the users would really benefit if you could talk about the type of setup that you had, traditional IT setup with a server on site and things of that nature. And then that would be great to give a background, also a list of applications and programs that you use to run your practice.
Okay, sure. That's a great question. And so, we had our own server, like many law firms do traditionally, and we outsourced our IT management to a local firm in Austin, and dealt with it as a cost of doing business. And it was a substantial expense every year. When cloud computing sort of came on the horizon, at least from the standpoint of being able to put your server on the cloud, I don't know how many years ago that was really viable, but I learned about it about 4 years ago, and started exploring those options. And I went through, I really tried to do my due diligence. I went through several different vendors who I got pretty far along with, and then realized it wasn't the right fit. And finally settled on LevelCloud. I think it was the third or fourth vendor we dealt with, to try and implement this model that we wanted, this cloud computing model that met all of the concerns we had. And I was very concerned about our ethical responsibilities to our clients and our confidentiality obligations and security of our data and so forth that was on our server, and realized that I could not build the kind of security into my server, even with my outside IT consultants, that I could enjoy by being on the cloud because of the redundancy and the backup system. So you have one system that's, in a very secure server farm in Colorado that's backed up by another server farm that's in another part of the country, and then I think there's even a third redundant backup system in somewhere else in the United States. So those things were very appealing to me, and then it turned out that it cut my IT costs not quite 50%, but close, somewhere between 40 and 50%. And once I just really started paying attention to what I was paying to these outside consultants to manage my in-house server versus the sort of economies of scale I could enjoy from being with a cloud provider, it was a no-brainer, frankly. So we use all of the traditional Microsoft applications for our law practice. We also use a case management system that's a fairly robust program and fairly complex called Prologue, which is now a Thomson Reuters product, but we bought into Prologue in 2001 when it was just a standalone company. And LevelCloud was very good at very quickly getting up to speed on how Prologue worked, how it integrated with Microsoft applications, and how to really get it to an optimum state so that we could use it in an effective way. And now I can get on to the Citrix server is really what the foundation is from my iPad, and open up Prologue and find the file that I need, and then find a document. All of our matter-related documents in Prologue, all the calendaring is in Prologue, all the contact information for everyone is in Prologue. So all of that information is there. I mean, it's much more versatile if you use it on a laptop, but you can certainly use it on a tablet as well. And so that's how we use it. And we, now when you're traveling across the country on an airplane, you have email service. You can, internet service. You can get onto your email, but you can also get onto your case matters and open up those files and download the documents and so forth. And there's also a functionality that is very important if your internet connection isn't as, you don't have the broadband connection you need, that you can download it very easily to the device you're using, so that you can work on it there without having to rely on an internet connection to do it, and then upload it back into the cloud to save it on your network system.
Well, thanks, Scott. I appreciate that was a fantastic background. Now, let me ask you a question. Before you started looking into cloud computing, what type of uptime or downtime you used to? What was the experience like when you had servers on site, even though you had it all outsourced and managed?
Well, I mean, the company that did it for us in Austin did a pretty good job of keeping us up. There were occasional problems, but, you know, and we usually had pretty good response time if we did have a problem.
Great.
But it was really just both a lack of redundancy to back up our systems was costly and cumbersome, and it was there was not the kind of robust security measures that, at least that I believe, I get through a cloud environment. And then, of course, the cost was almost twice as expensive. So between those things, it made it an easy decision to move to the cloud. The only question for us was, you know, what cloud provider is going to provide the kind of product that will be versatile enough and user-friendly enough and nimble enough to really address our needs.
Now, you
Right,
mentioned
gentlemen.
that you traveled a lot. Patrick, just one quick question before you can take over. You traveled a lot. Now, how was the remote connectivity when you were traveling and you had an on-premise environment? How did you come in through VPN connection? Was it a remote desktop connection, or did you just connect back to your PC using logging in or something like that?
Well, we had a VPN, a virtual private network, and it was cumbersome. It was slow. We had to go through our desktop, and so there's you know, it's a couple of levels removed. You're on the device you're on. You go through the internet. You connect to your desktop computer. That connects to your server. So it wasn't really optimum. I mean, it was cumbersome, and it took a long time to connect. There was always a lot of you know, waiting to get the connection established and so forth, and so that if you wanted to shut your computer down, you then had to go back through all those steps to get connected. Now, you know, we open up our computer as soon as we get an internet connection. We're on the internet. We can get to the cloud site and go right into the network servers.
Fantastic. Thank you.
So those are, you know, those are little things, but when they're repetitive over and over and over, they can really wear you down, I find. You know, if we can open up our laptop computer in court, and we did this in April when we were in trial in federal court with the court's internet connection, and get right into a matter and get into, you know, all the documents in a case, which and find them very quickly and call them up, and we have them right there. Where we, you know, where otherwise you'd have to bring, you know, 400 boxes of, or maybe 100 banker boxes of files to have all your documents immediately accessible.
Right, and I think, Scott, I think that's the flexibility that our clients really appreciate and enjoy. And we actually have a question in the audience. This one's for you, Biren. You know, this is great. We have this redundancy. We say we have all these backed up files. We have accessibility anywhere. But how? How do you deliver a more secure solution than if I just had my servers in my house? You know, I have them in my own office. I have them at my location. They're safe, right? Why? How does cloud provide a higher level of security? Can you expand on that?
That is a great question, and something that we often have to explain to the end user, you know, as part of the cloud computing education process. So first and foremost, I always like to break security into big components. Let's just talk about physical security to begin with. Physical, most of the times law firms have pretty good server room environments compared to, you know, other types of businesses. They have a server, they have a rack. Most of the time they lock it and things of that nature. So take that for example versus a data center that is a tier 4, a highest level that has biometric security, armed guards, 24-hour surveillance, name it, and man traps, body masks. I mean, there's a zillion things that they do just to enter the building where your servers are located. So right there, there's more security, physical security. Now also, the Tier 4 data center meets all these compliances, PCI and Sarbanes-Oxley and HIPAA and all that stuff. That is hard to implement on-premise without spending enormous amounts of money. So right there, there's no comparison. More physical security here from the physical. Now, let's talk about another layer of security, network security. Now what happens is all your data is segregated, segmented by VLANs, subnetted. So even though you are in the server infrastructure, we have carved out a private cloud for your firm. So you may feel like, wow, my data is in the data center, but essentially is completely secure through group policies and all that good stuff that you have on premise. Then we have firewalls, different levels of firewalls. We have something called encryption technologies. I can go on and on and on. But I mean, I actually have a spreadsheet, a PDF that I compare on-site security versus cloud security. And I address security into 4 different topics. So if the user is interested, I can definitely send that document over to them and go over each element of security, whether it's network security, intrusion prevention, encryption, two-factor authentication. Security is a topic that is near and dear to me, and there's a lot we can talk about there. But the bottom line is, as a cloud provider, we have invested a lot in these securities that our clients can enjoy without having to spend the money. So all our clients get that type of security that we're talking about.
Okay, thank you, Biren. Thank you. I'd like to move on. This is kind of a recap, a summary of what we've spoken about. But why, if you had to tell us in a few quick lines, why should the client consider the cloud at its core? Why should they do that?
Is that to Scott or Biren?
I'm sorry, Scott. That was for you. I apologize. If you could
okay.
tell us from your perspective, I apologize. If you had to tell us addressing these 4 main points, why would you consider the cloud? What if you had to go at the core of the problem or the question? Why would you consider?
Well, I mean, the question that, sort of tying it back to the question that was emailed, that Biren just addressed. I mean, if your server is not connected to the internet, then yeah, there's probably little concern about security breaches. But it's pretty difficult to function in an environment today, at least in my experience, where you don't utilize the internet in multiple ways, whether it's for research, for email, for various applications, whatever it is. And if you're going to be connected to the internet, then someone can breach your server system, and you're vulnerable. And so, to me, that was one of the things that was very appealing. Was I knew that I was going to have to embrace the internet increasingly, whether it's with my website, social media, internet research. Now all the Westlaw and Lexis are all internet-based, and email and so forth. So once I had that realization, I knew what was going to be the most robust security that I could get that was not cost-prohibitive. And certainly a cloud-based server provided that because of all the things that Biren just described in limiting accessibility to those servers. Now, as a practical matter, that's not to say that it's impenetrable. I mean, the Pentagon's been hacked these days. I mean, so, just about anything, I guess, can get hacked, and there's a risk of that. I think our obligation as attorneys and counselors of law is to do what we can within reason to limit that vulnerability. And so that was an important element for me of going to the cloud was both the security. Were all the various levels of security is what I'm driving at. The second thing that was really important to me, and of course I live very near the Gulf Coast, and while we were spared Hurricane Katrina and what happened there, we were certainly experienced a lot of the refugees from Hurricane Katrina, and then a year later was Hurricane Rita, and it was sort of deja vu. Well, there was a lot. I was involved in a lot of litigation that was taking place in New Orleans at the time of Hurricane Katrina, and whole law firms lost their servers. They lost everything. It was a catastrophic event. Now, it was obviously a sort of once in 100-year kind of hurricane, but there are any number of catastrophic events that could occur that could wipe out your servers. And so the redundancy for me was very important. I tried to build that redundancy into my own system, but it wasn't practical. First of all, I couldn't get the internet bandwidth I needed at the time. And part of this, cloud computing is becoming more and more of an option as the internet speeds and the bandwidth increases. So that was also a consideration. But at the time, I thought about locating a server with an employee who worked for me remotely and was in our New York office. But that just wasn't practical because of the backup time that it would take to transfer all of our files every day over the internet to back up on a server located in New York. We really couldn't do that, practically speaking. And so, and even if I, did it between my office and my home, still in the same city. If there was some kind of catastrophic event in the city, that wasn't going to help. So having those redundant systems, one in Colorado, one in, a second in the eastern part of the United States, and a third in the western part of the United States, provided some peace of mind. And then the third thing is, the accessibility, that it's very quick to access what I need when I need it. There isn't, a 5-minute uptime to try and, go through an internet connection and then log onto my VPN and then log into my desktop and then get into the server. And by the time you do that, it's taken 5 minutes. And, if you're really trying to move on the fly, 5 minutes can seem like an awful long time. At least if you're a trial lawyer and you're in a deposition or you're in court, in my experience, 5 minutes is a long time to do it. It's cumbersome, and it's a little lumbering to navigate around. And with the cloud, you certainly now with more reliable internet connections, you have it's much more nimble for me to get around, to get into get into Prologue primarily, or my email, and immediately access what I need. Now, of course, we have email on phones and tablets and so forth, and it's all pretty simple. But certainly getting into Prologue to open up a matter and look at the documents I need to is pretty seamless and pretty easy to do. And when I'm doing it, I don't feel that it's vulnerable to outside prying eyes, or I have a certain comfort level that it's not vulnerable to that. So that's really the third thing. And then the fourth thing I'll just add, Patrick, real quickly, is that people, because of that, if I have a staff member that has to stay home with a sick child, she can still be productive for me at home, and it makes her life easier. It makes my life easier. If I have to get something filed and I'm in federal court, my deadline, say, is midnight, I don't have to keep a paralegal in the office until then. If I'm working on it, they can do it for me at 10 o'clock at night from home as easily as they can do it from the office. So that really enhances the experience for my staff, too. Now, that doesn't go on all the time, but when it does, it makes everyone's life a little bit easier.
Right, absolutely. And that it actually alludes to the question that one of our guests asked. I have clients in multiple locations. I have employees and clients in multiple locations, not just one office. And how seamless or how effective is the communication between these offices in your experience, Scott? And Biren, I'm sure if you want to chime in and explain the communication between offices and what LevelCloud provides, I'm sure that our guests would appreciate that.
Yeah, let me take a jab at that first. So we have several clients that have multiple offices, more than one offices, and what happens in a traditional setup is one of the office acts as a corporate data center. That's where all the servers are and everything is air-conditioned, nice room, everything's set up. And the remote offices then VPN, or there's a point-to-point VPN connection or MPLS connection between all the offices, and they all sort of remotely connect to this corporate office where the servers are to access the data. What happens in this type of a setup is that the users in the main office usually are having a great time with the user experience because their computers are right there next to the servers and on the same local network. But the users that are off-site in remote offices are always having user performance issues because they have to connect over the internet. Now, what happens in the cloud is that corporate data center that I was talking about is all in one data center. So now, instead of few users having a better experience than other users, everybody has the best experience. And here's how that happens. Scott mentioned that he's in an airplane and he can access Prologue. So here's how it works. Citrix technology basically makes a secure connection to the servers, similar to like Netflix. When you log in, the movie never gets downloaded to your device. You are streaming the device based on the bandwidth you have. And so once the secure connection is made to the data center where the servers are, you're running these applications and program on the servers as if you're running on this massive computing power with unlimited bandwidth. So the user experience, the speed is consistent across all the users, and because of that working off of the server, it's a better experience versus depending on the speed of your computer. The computer is out of the equation now. The device, the desktop is out of the equation. It doesn't matter if you have a i3 processor, i5, or i7 processor. All the computing is happening at the server level, and that's very, very important to understand.
All right. Well, thank you so much for that insight, Biren.
Patrick, this is Scott. Let me just add something from my
Yeah.
experience when we had a
Please.
remote office. Before we were on the cloud, when we were on this server, then when we had other offices, say a remote office that didn't have their own server, they had to VPN to our existing server. That was very lumbering and cumbersome and frustrating and really limited or impacted productivity. When we went to the cloud I think we initially went to the cloud maybe in the beginning of 2012 and then eventually found our way to LevelCloud in September of 2012. It just changed that experience because the person working on the East Coast could access our applications, Prologue and Outlook and our calendaring system and so forth, as easily as the people working in Austin could. So that was a real game changer for us.
Well, that's good to know. I didn't even realize that, but I appreciate that, Scott. Thank you for that insight.
Yes, thank you, Scott. So what we're going to move on to now is the cloud migration process. Now, first I'd like to hear from Scott. There are going to be a few questions. I'd like Scott to address them, and if the audience, you have any questions, please feel free to ask. So Scott, take it away. How did it go? How long did it take?
Well, I have to really takes me back to think about it, and I had a lot of staff managing it. I think we were initially with a prior cloud provider that was a little more uh, uh, rudimentary on the cloud, in my opinion. And when I learned about LevelCloud, it just seemed to be a more sophisticated approach to it, more nimble. And so I decided to make a change from the first, or this was actually the second cloud provider. The first one we started to deal with just was not set up. They couldn't even begin the migration process, and they were 3 months behind schedule when we finally said, look, we're going to find another provider. We went to a second provider who did a pretty good, journeyman job of getting all of our data from our servers onto their servers. But that was kind of in my opinion, a early iteration of cloud computing. And when we saw that LevelCloud was available, the scalability was much easier up and down. We could add users and cut back users. With the prior cloud provider, we could only add users. Once we had a user added, we could never terminate that, which just wasn't a practical situation for the way my law firm, expands and contracts with people from time to time. So the migration, in my experience, was from those servers to the LevelCloud servers, and it was fairly painless. I think it happened over the course of a 3-day weekend, and whenever you do that, there are some glitches in initially getting up to speed and so forth. But I found that everybody at LevelCloud was very responsive and very helpful in working those glitches out. And of course, I think we were either their first or maybe their second client that was using Prologue, and so they really had to learn that very quickly. There's a steep learning curve on Prologue. But, to their credit, they really rallied and got up to speed, and now I think they're sort of the platinum certified Prologue partners. I don't know if that's the right term of art, Bjorn, but they're clearly a recognized Prologue partner. They have a certain level of expertise with the software and how it integrates with the various Microsoft applications and so forth, and how to really use it, and so that their clients can leverage it as an application. So the migration was not terrible. It was not, as I recall, too expensive. I thought it was reasonable. That's always a barrier to doing some of these things. I've thought many times about going to some newer, brighter, shinier case management system than Prologue, but just migrating the data from that system to the new system is almost cost prohibitive. And I've reevaluated that as I've learned to take advantage of all of the different applications within Prologue, and LevelCloud has helped us understand that and leverage those things. And now Prologue has rolled out a new version that is even more user-friendly, I think, and going to be more effective for our needs. So we're no longer really thinking about looking at the Joneses and what they're doing and seeing the grass greener on the other side. We're going to stick with what we have. But it's also reassuring that our cloud providers have really embraced the software that we need to use and made it, taken responsibility and taken an initiative to really learn it and become well-versed in it.
Thank you. And real quick, I wanted to address a question. We got a question from one of our guests. Real quick, Biren.
Yes.
They're asking, what is the difference between accessing Prologue through the Prologue's app and accessing it through LevelCloud. Maybe we can go into a little bit of detail on how LevelCloud Workspace works and how hosting apps works, just real quick.
I can briefly talk about it. So Prologue has a mobile version, an app that you can actually download, a native iOS app. Not sure about Android app, but it's limited in what you can access. You can probably pull up a few matters and some dockets and things of that nature, but it's not the full version of Prologue in that app. Now, I hope I'm interpreting the question correctly. Prologue, and we host many other software besides just Prologue, but since Prologue is being talked about, I'll use that as an example. Prologue, you can install it on your local desktop and access it, and it will go to the server and fetch all the information and give it to you at a desktop level. All we are doing is shifting that location, how the app gets installed. It's installed on the server, and you're directly accessing it from the server. So the user experience is going to be absolutely the same, actually better, because of the speed. You'll see the improvement in speed. Actually, so many of our firms have told us that we don't understand how Prologue is running better and faster than our on-site server. And again, I have to explain to them that, even on your local network, the application, the desktop application, has to go over your LAN, over your wire, to the server and bring that data back. So there's a lag, versus in the cloud, you're directly running off the server, and right there, and the data, the application doesn't have to go anywhere to fetch that information. It's right there, and hence the performance. And of course, the night and day difference between a server on site versus a server in the cloud. The whole different infrastructure.
And Biren, this is Scott. Let me just add something to that. When we had the server in-house, we had to have a separate, dedicated Prologue server for all of the data that it kept, because all of our documents were in Prologue and all of our contacts and so forth. And then a second server that was for everything else. And those servers had to talk to each other. And there were also, as I recall now, there were always lots of issues in those servers communicating and keeping that operating. And that has really been one of the most significant differences that we've experienced in going to the cloud, is that problem has been eliminated.
Okay, great. That's a common setup that we see. Patrick, there's also a relevant question that came up about how much data was migrated, and this is a question for Scott, and how much data was migrated to the cloud during this particular migration? So I checked with my...
That's a great question. Yeah,
yes,
I don't
Scott,
know the answer to that.
And that's okay, because I knew you wouldn't know that. It's been a while. And so I asked my staff who did the migration. It was close to 500 gigabytes, 400 to 500 gigabytes. And what had happened is, because we were transitioning from another cloud provider, we had them ship all that data on an external hard drive and ship it directly to our data center over the weekend, where we uploaded all that data, and on Monday morning they were live with all their data, all the Prologue documents and things of that nature. So the size of the data really doesn't matter. We have firms that have 2-3 terabytes of data that we were able to migrate. Again, please understand that we're not uploading all this data over 5 meg pipe. It's very, very sophisticated in how we do cloud migrations. The best part about cloud migrations is that your new environment is being built parallel to your production environment. So you continue to function the way you function while we install the applications, get everything ready, and all the kinks worked out on the side. And then all we are doing is moving all that data over a period of time, so that when you do go live on Monday, there's absolutely no downtime, and all the data has been synchronized. There's been enough time given to synchronize all your data. So that's kind of how we do it, and that's kind of what we specialize in, zero downtime.
Well, thank you, gentlemen. I think if there are any other questions, please ask in the last few minutes. But I'd like to move on. The final thing we'd like to encourage our viewers today, we have a complimentary offer for our attendees. It's a cloud assessment. It's called a cloud readiness assessment. And Bjorn, could you go into a little bit of detail on what this is?
Sure. Basically, what we are finding is many firms hear about cloud. They go to CLEs. Somebody came and spoke about cloud, and first biggest objection we get is security. If I can't see the server, if it's not in my office, it's insecure. Period. And they just don't investigate further. They don't address it. And then sometimes IT also is not very supportive. Sometimes IT is very supportive, but sometimes IT is also skeptical about moving all this out of their environment. So one of the first things we recommend firms do is see if you're ready for the cloud. And this is important. You never want to just say, oh, I'm going to the cloud and just, make this radical change in your organization. It's so important to do a thorough analysis of your applications, whether they're compatible in a cloud type of Citrix type of environment. Do you have enough bandwidth at your remote locations? Um, what kind of other unique requirements that you have. So again, there might be some legacy applications. So all those things have to be figured out. And I remember when Scott came on board, we did like a complete assessment of his servers, how much data he had. And there was actually an application, OCR application that they still use called Abby. That was actually not Citrix compliant at the time because it was an older version. So we told Scott up front that, this is not going to work. However, we'll give it a try. So we did give it a try. The application still works in the cloud. It has a few kinks here and there, but again, those are things we want to try and avoid. We want users to have the best experience. So when they go to the cloud. So hence we highly recommend that they take a cloud readiness assessment. So in this assessment, we basically work with IT or without IT staff. Some firms don't have IT staff. So we do our assessments and then give you a report on whether you're ready to go to the cloud or not, or what steps you need to take to go to the cloud to have the best experience. So yeah, I think it's really the step one.
And Biren, I would add that, in getting ready to go to the cloud, I did the research that I did was a great part of it was through the law practice management. At the time was the law practice management section of ABA, but it's now the law practice management division of ABA. And they have a monthly magazine called Law Practice Management that's really quite excellent. They have a number of very sophisticated contributors who are really keeping track of technology and innovations and so forth. And there are occasionally commentators out there who are raising a hue and cry about security issues on the cloud and so forth. And it's, my impression of it has been a little bit of the kind of a sky is falling kind of mentality. I think that the reality is that cloud servers are really certainly the right ones. If you get the right vendor, the right provider, they're secure, they're reliable, and I have a very high comfort level in using it. And in that OCR software, I think has since been upgraded, so we have a more current version of it that probably is cloud compliant now.
Okay, great, fantastic. So thanks for that insight. There was also a question that we may have missed, and I really want to address all these questions if I can. The question is that what are the individual desktop requirements? We have a similar software like Prologue, and that requires a separate server. So really on the desktop side, I mean, as long as you have a current Windows operating system, Windows 7 and above, you're good. There's no requirements on RAM. Like I say, there's no processing happening on the desktop level. Everything is happening on the server. All we need is to install a piece of software on whatever device you want to connect from, whether it's an iPad or Droid. It's a one-time install, and you set it and forget it. type of a deal. And then I think there was just a comment of how we are heading back to the days of mainframe computing. Some of you on the call might be familiar with mainframe terminals, and well, that's really where we are going. You know, cloud computing, everything's centralized in one place. Of course, so yeah, that's where we're going.
Excellent. Well, thank you for your insight, Biren. Scott, is there anything you want to say in closing? Our guests may want to hear from you on.
Well, no, I think that, when I talk to other law firms and people at CLE events that I'm invited to speak at, or practice management sessions, and I work with a group called Atticus online that works exclusively with small to medium-sized law firms and individual lawyers and how to manage their practices more efficiently and effectively, and I've spoken to some of their groups and so forth, and I talk about the advantages of the cloud for the type of practice I have. So, like I said, we're handling a mesothelioma case in Illinois and one in California, one in Texas, one in Delaware. It really helps to have the kind of access that the cloud provides us, and the ability to manage everything from wherever we are. Because at least in my practice, whether I'm at a hearing on a metal hip implant, or a pharmaceutical drug MDL, or in Washington State dealing with a mesothelioma case, or in Mexico handling some other catastrophic injury, I know I can always access the files that I have and get to the data I need, and it really makes a big difference in my day-to-day experience practicing law. It makes my life easier, lowers my stress level, and really helps to give you some peace of mind about backups, redundancy, security, all of those things that as a business owner you have to worry about are really taken care of for the most part.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Scott. Biren, is there anything you'd like to say in closing?
Yes, I would like to say that there were some fantastic questions, and I want to appreciate Scott for giving an unbiased opinion and feedback. It sounded like you were paid to do this, Scott, and I want to put it out there. Scott is not. Scott is just happy to do this for us.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not paid.
Thank you so much, Scott. I appreciate that insight. And I hope our audience has benefited today from having an independent perspective from one of their colleagues. And there was a question that came up which I wanted to address before we close. There was a question if you support Mac servers and databases and programs. So I'm not quite understanding the question. Of course, you can use a Mac laptop, but we support all Office programs and even some graphic design software packages that do get installed on Macs. We can host it on a Windows servers. We don't have Mac servers in our data center. We have Linux and Windows servers, and most of the times our clients have either Windows. 1% of our client uses a Linux-based environment, but otherwise it's all Windows servers, and on the device side you can use any type of device, whether it's Mac or Windows. So hopefully that answers your question. If you didn't, just email us. You have our contact information. Now make a note of this one. This is going to be a really, really exciting topic, cyber liability. And I am speaking a lot about it these days. We are actually helping law firms get cyber liability insurance. Because there's a lot of talk about it. There's a good case to be made about protecting the firm. Even though we have our own insurances, it makes sense for a law firm to get it as well. So I hope you can join us and let others know about this wonderful topic.
Yeah, thank you, Biren, and I'd like to thank you personally, Scott. Thank you for joining us and taking the time out of your day. And Bjorn as well, thank you. And yes, I encourage all of you, all of our guests, please join us on December 9th.
30
There's going to
seconds.
be some great content. Great content.
And if you've liked anything about the webinar, if you want something changed, if you thought that we didn't touch on a few topics, please send me an email directly. I would love to incorporate it in future webinars, and we'll keep this going because we have several topics to talk about when it comes to cloud computing. So thanks again, Scott. Thanks everyone for your time. Have a fabulous
You're
day,
welcome,
and
Biren.
yep, have a great day, and we'll talk to you in the next webinar.